Welcome to day 1 of Lilly Dreams. Over the next 10 days, I'll show you how I transformed this plain piece of silk into a hand painted scarf featuring elegant lilies, a soft watercolor background, and a decorative border. I'm using 21 by 22 inch Habotai Silk, which is lightweight, smooth, and perfect for beginners as well as experienced silk painters. Before painting, I always wash the silk to remove any sizing or finish left from the manufacturing process. This helps the dyes flow evenly through the fabric. Once it's dry, I gently iron the silk to remove any wrinkles. A smooth surface makes it much easier to stretch and paint. Now our silk is clean, smooth, and ready for the next step. Here's a quick tip. Never skip washing new silk. It helps the dye flow more evenly and gives you better results. Welcome to day 2. Today we are stretching the silk onto the frame. Using fabric pins, I attach one end of the painter's tape to the silk and the other end to the frame. I stretch the silk until it's smooth, firm, and not so tight that it distorts the fabric. These are the supplies I'll be using throughout the series: a frame, silk paints, water-based gutta, a few soft brushes, and a palette for mixing colors. Now our silk is ready for the next step. Here's a quick tip. Don't overstretch the silk. It should be smooth and wrinkle-free, but not pulled so tightly that it distorts the weave. Welcome to day 3. Today we are transferring our lily design onto the silk. I place the pattern underneath the silk and raise it with a few books so the design is easier to see through the fabric. Using a pencil, I lightly trace the outlines. The sketch is just a guide, so I keep the lines light. Next, I carefully trace over the pencil lines with water-based gutta. Think of gutta as a fence. It creates a barrier that keeps the silk dyes from flowing into areas where they don't belong. I took my time to make sure all the lines are connected. Once the gutta is completely dry, we are ready to start painting. Here's a quick tip. Make sure every gutta line is connected. Even a tiny gap can let the dye spread where you don't want it. Welcome to day 4. Today we are painting our first lily. I am using 3 colors: magenta, cherry red, and brown. I begin by filling each petal with a soft magenta. While the paint is still wet, I add a line of cherry red through the centers of the petals. Then, using a clean, slightly damp brush, I gently blend where the two colors meet to create a soft, natural transition. I repeat the same process for each petal until the lily comes to life. Then, using a small brush, I add a few brown streaks near the center of each petal to add more depth. These little details give the flower a more realistic look. Here's a quick tip. After adding the darker colors, wipe your brush before blending. A clean, damp brush creates a much softer transition. Welcome to day 5. Today we are painting the leaves around our lilies. I am using Seta Silk Oriental Green for the leaves. I am filling each leaf with rich green, carefully following the outline and letting the colors flow evenly across the silk. Working one leaf at a time helps me keep the edges clean and gives the design a fresh, natural look. With the flowers and leaves complete, the scarf is really starting to come together. Here's a quick tip. Use enough dye to fill the leaves evenly, but avoid overloading your brush. A smooth, even application gives the best results. Welcome to day 6. Today we are creating the soft background that brings the whole scarf together. I begin by wetting the background with clean water. This helps the dyes flow smoothly across the silk. I am using 4 colors for the background. I start with the light green, then add olive green, then chestnut brown, and finally dark brown. Working while the silk is still wet allows the colors to blend naturally, creating a soft organic background. Before the paint begins to dry, I sprinkle a light layer of salt over the background, avoiding the flowers. As the scarf dries, the salt pulls some of the color away, creating beautiful starburst-like texture that makes every painting unique. About 30 minutes later, this is the beautiful texture the salt has created. A quick tip: sprinkle the salt while the background is still wet. If the paint starts to dry, the salt won't create the same beautiful texture. Welcome to day 7. Today we are adding a freehand wavy border to frame our silk scarf. I begin by outlining the border with water based gutta. The gutta creates a barrier that keeps the color neatly inside each section. Once the gutta is dry, I fill the border with ebony brown, working one section at a time to keep the color smooth and even. This simple wavy border adds a beautiful finishing touch and helps bring the whole design together. Here's a quick tip: turn your frame as you work instead of twisting your hand. It's much easier to paint smooth, even lines. Welcome to day 8. Today we are adding the final details and the finishing touches. I begin by painting the flower stamens, adding those delicate details that complete each bloom. Next, I deepen the centers of the flowers to create more depth and contrast. Finally, I look around the entire scarf and touch up any areas that need a little more color or refinement. These small finishing touches help bring the whole design together. Our painting is now complete and ready to come off the frame. A quick tip: before you finish, step back and look at your painting as a whole. Small touch-ups can make a big difference. Welcome to day 9. Today we are taking our finished scarf off the frame and completing the final finishing steps. First, I carefully unhook the silk from the frame. Then I heat set the scarf by ironing it. This helps make the color permanent and prepares it for washing. Next, I finish the edges on my sewing machine to give the scarf a clean professional finish. Then I gently wash the scarf to remove any excess dye and any remaining silk salts. After it air dries, I give it one final press. Now our hand painted silk scarf is finished and ready to wear. A quick tip: always follow the heat setting and washing instructions for the silk paints or dyes you are using to keep your colors vibrant. Welcome to the final day of Lilly Dreams silk scarf painting. 10 days ago, we started with a plain piece of white silk. Step by step, we transformed the design, painted the lilies, added a colorful background with a beautiful salt texture, finished the borders, and completed all the final details. And here is our finished hand-painted silk scarf. You can also paint this same design on a longer scarf and wear it elegantly around your shoulders, or a small scarf around your neck. Each one becomes this beautiful piece of wearable art. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Paint with Priya for more silk painting inspirations.